All right, what's up, everybody? We're gonna hit a issue real quick because I think there's a lot of it going on, and I mean, usually every person in the world is susceptible to it or exhibits it. What we're gonna talk about is a term in psychology that's used to describe a certain aspect of it or trait, which is called cognitive dissonance. It's a state of having inconsistent thoughts, beliefs, or attitudes, especially as relating to behavioral decisions and attitude change. What exactly does that mean on a breakdown? Well, it's kind of like you have a certain set of values that you claim or hold to, but yet you support or show a different side to in examples. Okay. I think there's a lot of that going on right now. And I'm not going to make this a huge political video because I think we've got enough of those. But I think what a lot of people don't realize is that they're suffering from cognitive dissonance. And I'm going to use it as an example because it's one that's really bold and brazen that comes to my mind pretty easily. Because I've had debates and I've had discussions and really straight out arguments about, this Trump situation. The people can't stand him, they hate him. And you ask them why. Well, he's a racist. We don't like racism, do you? Well, how is he racist? Well, this, and that. Well, okay, you believe that you don't like racism, but yet you don't like him because he's a racist, but yet you have no solid evidence that he's a racist. That's a good example of cognitive dissonance. You believe something that you don't have evidence for. I mean, there's other words for that as well, but we're just going to stay on this one for right now. So another form of it is saying that, well, you don't like the way that he puts people down. He insults people, and he's just pompous, and he doesn't know what he's talking about. Well, I'm going to give you an example of something that those things are all that you can agree with, things that you can agree with, right? And I mean, I agree with them to an extent. I don't agree that he's the most great. I don't think he's very great a spokesperson. If he has an opinion that's low of you, he will trash talk you. Um, and those are points that don't really fit well with me. They don't attract me, but you know, coming from his point of view, he's been on the attack quite a bit. He's been attacked quite a bit, and he's gone through a lot. So you have to, when you're judging somebody and you're taking a stance against something, you should really try to take a different perspective look at it. Kind of put yourself in the other person's shoes, so to speak. But let's take a look at, you said that you don't like how he's insulting and he's just brash and harsh and egotistical and you know let's I'm going to use this as an example because this is one of Obama. So let's listen to this real quick and we'll dissect it and look at it psychologically. Now this is a little bit of a response to Trump's claims of mail fraud or voter fraud or things that could be manipulated within an election. So that's what this speech is in reference to. So keep that in mind as we talk about it.
That, keep in mind, elections are run by state and local officials, which means that there are places like Florida, for example, where you've got a Republican governor who's a Republican appointees are going to be running and monitoring a whole bunch of these election sites. The notion that somehow...
Now, here's an interesting fact. We're talking about officials, right? So just because there's a Republican and a Democrat in different positions, does that mean that there can be no crime ever committed? From where his speech comes from and where it's standing on, there is no evidence. There's nothing backing what he's saying. Just because it doesn't have any relevancy. That's like saying, well, there's cops that are in the city, so, I mean, there's just no way that a crime could ever be committed. It has no bearing or no fruit of truth or has no relevance to what is actually being referenced, which is voter fraud. If somebody's going to commit a crime, or if they're going to do that, none of that has any pertinence to the situation. So it's very relevant what he's saying.
If Mr. Trump loses Florida, it's because of those people that you have to watch out for.
Okay, just because he has a better demeanor whenever he's doing it, because he's a much better speaker, more composed, make no mistake that all the things that he's doing right now are very insulting. First of all, it's not Mr. Trump, it's President Trump. Okay? Everybody still calls him that, and everybody still calls Biden president-elect, except for people who have already jumped the gun, and Biden himself, which, you know, said he wasn't going to do that, but did it anyway, which is a big play on character. Now, on character, when he loosely gives the quote marks, did Trump actually say that verbatim? Okay, those people. And those people he's referring to, that's not even, I don't know what those people are. Are you talking Republicans or Democrats? Or are you talking about dishonest people that would break the law or cheat? Because those people is not specific. He says you should watch out for those people. I believe you should watch out for those people. Who are those people? Wait a minute. Who, if they're criminals? Yeah, you should watch out for those. I mean, I'm just saying. And the other thing that you can tell that when in his own mind, where he kind of stumbles as he's talking, because he's about to go into an insult, and it's a lowering of his character, and he knows he's consciously about to do it, and that's why he goes, eh, 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 eh. That's what that noise is. Okay? So we've gone from trying to diffuse somebody's opinion or thought process or reasoning with some facts that are not really relevant, then going off of an assumed quote in kind of misdirection, then trying to make it to where he makes a quote that doesn't make any sense with those people. And here comes the we're going into a category of an insult.
That is both irresponsible and, by the way, doesn't really show the kind of leadership and toughness that you'd want out of a president. If you start whining before the game's even over.
Okay, so there you have a broad spectrum of insults. He's whining, right? He's not a tough, strong leader, and it's irresponsible. Those are comments that are insults. They're there to pinpoint weaknesses or bad traits. Big, strong leader, powerful, strong leader, big macho guy, that might not necessarily be needed at all times. You don't always have to be a badass and you don't always have to be that. And sometimes that's not a good trait to have. So, I mean, that you just have to roll with the punches and take different situations as they are. When you say irresponsible, well, I think it's irresponsible to not investigate claims of fraud or to verify. I think that's very irresponsible because some people's votes might not have been tabulated correctly. There might be cheating involved. And if there is, then that faith in the system is dissolved. So it's, I mean, how irresponsible is that? A government system that's designed to let people have a voice is being manipulated, and nobody wants to look into it. That, my friend, is irresponsible. And it's not from one person's point of view, it's from a lot of people's point of view. And the whole thing about the whining, you know, I think that if somebody stood up and said, I believe that this is cheated and I want it checked out, and brings to courts evidence of it, or at least enough to raise question, and if anybody's ever been cheated or treated mistreated or treated badly or, you know, wronged, and you verbalize it, that's not necessarily whining. It's vocalizing your emotion. Now, if you just sit there and go on and on and on about it, after there's just like some acknowledgement of it, then it's whining. Okay? And I will remind you that during the 2016 election, The same thing happened. He was the one that was whining about Russian hacking, Russian interference. And it went on for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks until it was found in court that it was completely falsified information and there was no wrongdoing, period. Okay? So now, that was just an example. I broke it down for what he did, but let's talk about why, what all that means, right? Just because he's smooth about it and kind of has a demeanor that's more pleasant and, more articulate, make no mistake that he was very insulting, okay? Very, threw a lot of accusations, misrepresented information, okay? And basically did exactly what Trump does, but just did it in a nice tone. I mean, so he also contradicted things from the past. And that's the big thing here. When you have to break it down in evidence that these people contradict themselves and lie about things on a consistent basis. And these are the things that you say that you don't like about Trump. He screwed this country up. He doesn't know what he's doing and this and that. You can go through any presidency and see the same examples. Okay? You don't like Trump because you don't like Trump, but come up with some solidified reasoning. I get it. He's not, very palatable. He's not very tasteful. He's kind of brash. Okay? But you have to look at the other side of the spectrum, and you also have to be all inclusive. Because you say that you don't like these things, but yet you're saying that you like the people on this side because they do it smoother? Is that what it is? This is something about politics. Isn't about who you think is prettier. It's not who you think can insult somebody nicer. It's about what they've accomplished, what they've done. And you want to say that the pandemic thing was all his fault, but have some accountability. If it's flu season, when it was flu season when Obama was in presidency, did you wear a mask because he didn't? Or did you not wear one because he didn't? Or did you get cough syrup? Did you check to see if he bought cough syrup or any kind of like Theraflu and then bought it? I mean, these are health decisions that we should rely on ourselves for. We don't rely on other people except for maybe a physician to seek guidance from. If your weight was importance on, was your importance weighed on anything other than your own well-being, well, I mean, you probably had the wrong concept there. When I usually ask what people say, why they don't like him, he messed up the pandemic thing, or he just is very insulting, or what I hear a lot is that the world thinks very low of us. The world doesn't think low of us. You don't watch news outside of the world. You don't. So that's the political aspect of cognitive dissonance. So what's another good example? And I get called out on it, and I call people out on it, but it's something that's irrefutable, and it happens. If you are a religious person, or if you have a set standards or beliefs, like say a Christian, where you don't exhibit the behavior all the time, and I'm subject to that as well, because I try to have a moral code and try to do the right thing at all times. But for a long time I didn't. For a long time I was a mouthy, cussy. I cuss in some of these videos that I do, and it's not really to be disrespectful or vulgar. It's just for verbal emphasis, And it's kind of a bad habit, and I should structure myself a little bit better, because, if I try to represent myself as a holy person, which I definitely am not, I always try to, represent myself as a moral person. Now, I might offend somebody with my language, and if I do, then I'm sorry, but most people are acceptable of it. I do try to watch it from time to time, because I do have kids, and that's another thing. You can be cognitive dissonant if you have children, but you don't act like a parent. You can say that I'm a parent, but if you're a parent and you go drinking and clubbing every night, all the time, then are you a good parent? Are you a parent if you're not there? But the one about the religious thing is that, if somebody tells you that, well, I'm a Christian, you automatically have a precipice of what you have expectations for their behavior and their code that they should adhere to, but they might not always have that. And that comes about quite frequently. And that's why it's really hard for Christians or religious people to deal with people, because it's one of those things that when somebody says that they are of a faith, the magnifying glass is on you, period. And the minute that you don't live up to that expectation, it's shot down. But we have to be a little bit forgiving and understanding that before we are anything that of a code that we try to adhere to, we're human beings. Okay? I have situations that are taking place, here recently, where I have to step back and take check of and say, well, it's all good, because everybody's human, right? I mean, there are certain situations where somebody will say something directly to you, it's acknowledged, and they'll do the opposite. That is not the same. But as far as like a religious code and mentally projecting what somebody should be and them failing, is different from what can often be mistaken by hypocrisy. And hypocrisy is the practice of claiming to have moral standards or beliefs to which one's own behavior does not conform. Well, and that's where the fine line becomes. It becomes whenever you acknowledge it, or you don't try to make any improvement. And I mean, if I was to say something like, uh, you know what, I'm going to give you that car because when I get my new car, because I'm not going to need it after that, right? And I don't say anything else. I get a new car, and I never mention it. Now, are you from your standpoint are going to be like, well, I thought he was going to give me that car because we got a new one, and what's up with that? Now, you don't want to impose, because it's a very kind gesture. So you're kind of at a point where it's like, well, he said he was going to do it, he didn't do it. Well, did he lie to me? Is he a hypocrite, or is he, cognitive, dissonant? What's going on here? What did I do? Did I do something wrong? Now, if it goes by, several months go by, or almost a year goes by, and there's no mention of it, I would probably say the dude might be a hypocrite, because there's been plenty of time to recount and think about it, especially if it's like somebody like your neighbor that you see like every day, and they know that you have the car, and they see the new car, and it's not, there's no way around it. You're either the person is just a coward and doesn't want to acknowledge it or discuss it, or just wants to ignore it till it goes away, or they're a hypocrite. Either way, that's a pretty bad lapse in judgment. But just to wrap this up, I just want people to be aware that when you're taking a stance on something, be aware and acknowledge the full spectrum of the situation. Okay? And educate yourself, because it's about your mind. And if you come at people with negativity, it can be very hurtful. We're all here to learn. We're all here to grow. And most of the times, the situations like hypocrisy and a lot of these things that I've talked about in this video, they occur, and it will occur. And your stances on things will change as you grow as a person. The things you did whenever you were 5, you don't do when you're 25. The way you think is not going to be the same, because you have life experiences to grow upon, and changes. So whenever you have these situations arise, realize that, and don't stand strong to them. A lot of people will stand firm on a belief, even though they've seen something that changes them and they've changed their stance. A lot of people don't want to back down from what they believed. Or if they've stated it in the past, they don't want to admit that. It'd be like admitting that they were wrong if they've changed their stance. Just express to the people that, hey, I've had time to think about it, and I was wrong. There's nothing wrong with being wrong. I'm quite wrong quite sometimes. I don't know, often. I'm not perfect. I never claimed to be perfect. I'm really good. I'm not perfect. So when we're talking with each other and we're debating, we're discussing, let's not be so quick to anger or quick to defend so harshly, and just try to understand. I mean, it's really funny because like during these whole things, like it's on social media, I'd come across somebody that would say something completely absurd, and I would just kind of inject myself into the situation, and we'd have a discussion, and it was just like they would unload all this anger, and I would just say, well, it's really good, but I can see your point on this, this, and this. It's really important to understand how we connect and on the good things, because there are certain things that I can't agree with the Trump haters on Trump. I don't like his egotisticness. I don't like, there are things, I'm not saying he's perfect. There are things that I don't like, but if you're going to sit there and tell me that Joe Biden is the best president, he's going to make this country perfect, and not look at any of the bad things and the situations that he brings to the table that could, be terrible for us, then you're disillusional, and you should check that. Okay? Well, hopefully this was good for somebody. And maybe in a year I'll listen to it like I listened to one of my videos that I did a couple years ago, and I was like, wow, that's pretty informative. I'm glad I listened to that. I mean, I knew what I was talking about more back then than I do now, but anyway, I'll see y'all. Have a good one.